I waited and I waited and I waited, and unfortunately, tailoring has not been fixed yet. There are a lot of issues going on the beta with tailoring. I did record a half an hour video and I watched it again and I was like, no, I don't want to put that up. But unfortunately, it's so close to the Midnight's launch now, and I don't think we get any other builds on the beta. And I need to talk about tailoring nonetheless, because early access is in a few days. Anyways, I'm gonna try to explain everything as best as I can, but just be aware that this is the Midnight beta. It might still change a day from the early access, and a lot of these issues have been present in the last few weeks. And it is quite annoying and it is a headache to deal with. Therefore, this video is gonna be a bit different as opposed to the other videos that we had on the professions. I want to talk about the issues first, then get into the builds, because it is a very, very annoying thing to talk about, and I need to separate it from the builds and speculate that how it might get fixed later on, maybe in the early access or maybe in a last minute build of the beta, who knows. Therefore, just be warned, this is the beta and I want to talk about a lot of issues, and tailoring is not done. I'm gonna give you an example first. Generally, in any profession, you would max out the armor pieces, get every single node and every single point of skill, then spec into up to another main node, let's say like fiber arts here, and having the profession equipment at the highest tier would let you create that recipe at the highest quality possible without using concentration. But unfortunately, for tailoring, it's quite different. The skill here is useful, it is required, and you need to max out everything. But at the same time, you will gain bits and pieces of skill from the other specs. Fabric Specialist here will give you 5 skill if you spend 20 points in it. And in the sub spec of it, you will again gain 5 skill when crafting other tailoring recipes. This is a cloth farmer build. This is tailored to all of those farmers. So, what's up with that? You have again another 5 skill here. And you think this is annoying? Let me show you the 5 arts. So you get all of the skill from the main node here just by speccing into fiber arts. And then you need to spend more points into textile utilization to get even more skill. And you need to max it out to get 5 more skill. Bits and pieces of skill is scattered throughout all of the specs. Therefore, if you want to be able to craft a single piece of equipment, you need to spec into all 4 of them. For example, if you want to create a Sunfire cloak here, you need to spend all of the points into the cloaks, outfit essentials, cinder refinery, fiber arts, textile utilization, creative efficiency, and fabric specialist. That's just an example, and I'm not sure, to be honest, if this is intended. This is gonna be a very hard profession to set up, especially if you're going for the equipment, because getting all of these skills, bits and pieces, 20 points just for 5 skill is a lot. You need to only spend 20 points here, 25 points here, and 20 points here. Therefore, like 65 points only in the fabric specialist for 15 skill ups. There is the debate that you can do stuff with the optional reagents, and it is true, you can. But the optional reagents are not available to us right away, and at the beginning of the expansion they're quite expensive. Anyways, just be aware that this issue exists and it might get fixed later on, it might not get fixed, it might be the intended way, and I wanted to put that out because every single build that I'm gonna talk about later on in the video will require you to get all of the skill. And I'm not gonna go through it every single time. I will just remind you guys that you need to come to the Fiverr odds, for example, spend 30 points here, 10 points here, and then 30 points here to get all of the skill, and then use optional reagents to craft something, or maybe just get all of it to be able to craft it without optional reagents and concentration. Just be aware that I want to put that out as the first thing I do in this video, because that's the most important thing for you to know if you want to do anything with the tailoring. Just be aware that you need to spend points into all of these 4 specs for you to be able to create a specific recipe at the highest quality without concentration. Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about the Mastercraft build. The first thing you need to do is to unlock all of the recipes. Doesn't matter which order, just unlock every single one of them. Spend 30 points into the middle node and only unlock the recipes. You can spec into any of the subcategories. The order is not important at all. Just make sure that you max out one of the middle nodes first, then move back to Cinder Refinery, spend only the required points to unlock the next subspec, and max the next one out, and move back up to the main node to get the last one and unlock all of the recipes. Be aware that you only need 25 points to unlock the 3 subspecs here. We will max out this one as the last thing we do after we have gotten our recipes. Therefore, just unlock them. The order again does not matter at all. You just want the recipes and to be able to craft them with concentration now. When all of the recipes have been unlocked, spend 5 more points here because you're getting 5 more skill and 15 resourcefulness. We need every single point of skill. Therefore, just max this one out and move into fiber arts. Now you need to spend 30 points here because you're getting at least 30 points of skill whenever crafting any piece of cloth armor. Prioritize one of the pieces over the other, and I strongly recommend that you get the off pieces first, because the cloaks, the belts, the braces, and the wrists do not interfere with the main tier pieces. They are way more in demand than the main ones. That is my opinion, but in my experience, these are the best pieces to max out first. Again, whichever order you decide to max out these sub nodes, doesn't matter really. Just max them out. Get the boots, belts, braces, and cloaks first, and then the main ones, and be done with it. After maxing every node in the Cinder Refinery, unfortunately you still won't be able to craft everything without concentration. You're still missing quite a lot of skill, and you need to move back to Fiverr Arts and get textile utilization first, because Mastercraft builds actually use resourcefulness for more profits. Therefore we're speccing into textile utilization first. So just spend 30 points and get all of the resourcefulness and skill here. Now unfortunately you need to spec into creative efficiency. I do know that you won't be using multi-craft at all as a Mastercraft build, but because we require these skills, we need to spec into it. At this point, you only need 10 points into creative efficiency to get 5 skill, and the whole thing revolves around optional reagents now. You are missing 20 skill to craft everything at the highest quality with the highest crest. If you have the highest tier of profession equipment and accessories, you're missing 5 points from here and 15 points from fabric specialist. Therefore 65 points to get that 15 points here is quite a lot, and 20 points to get 5 skill from here is quite a lot. Anyways, now that you have gotten the creative efficiency to 10 points, you can craft everything with optional reagents. The main goal now as a master crafter is to get rid of the dependency that we have on the optional reagents. And unfortunately, every 5 skill that you gain throughout the specs require you to spend 20 knowledge points. Therefore, you need to spend 20 more knowledge points here to get 5 points of skill. And unfortunately, you're still using that plus 20 skill optional reagents because we don't have a variant for 15 skill points. Therefore, you need to come to fabric specialist, spend 20 points here, and unlocking the 5 skill node. Now you can use the optional reagent that increases your skill by 10 points. For the next 5 points, you will choose either Eastern Kingdom's cloth or otherworldly cloth. Really doesn't matter because we're doing this for the skill, not the cloth drops. You need to spend 20 more points here to get 5 more skill. Now you're able to craft everything with the optional reagent that increases your skill by 5 points. Unfortunately, you need to spend 5 more points into the fabric specialist to unlock the next subspec, and 20 more here to get the last 5 skill required. And it is done. You can now craft every single piece of armor without concentration or optional reagents. You would think that you're done, but no, you're not. You still got ways to go. You need to get everything out of nimble needlework to be able to craft every specialty armor and all of the stuff tied to that at the highest quality. This is basically the same spec that we had in the previous expansions, just different names and different perks. Choose one of these. I'm not sure which one is the most profitable one. Whichever ends up in the meta will be the most profitable one, therefore choose that one. In this scenario, we got Sunfire Silk. You need to spend 30 points here to get all of the recipes. You will get a boots recipe and a cloak recipe, Sunfire Cloak and Sunfire Threads. And you need 10 points to get the braces. I wanna recommend another thing here at this point. You can just move back up because you don't require the multi-craft, you don't require the cooldown recovery times to be shortened because you're basically just crafting gear. You don't want to bother with this stuff. But because we already got the multi-craft from the fiber arts, I strongly recommend that you delve into the bolts too and therefore spend 10 more points to be able to craft more bolts and get more gold out of the profession. Then work your way back up. Max out nimble needlework first, because that gives you all of the skill required to craft one side of the nimble needlework. Then move into another category and just max that one out. There's also the debate that you should just spec into nimble needlework whenever you feel comfortable with the optional reagents. If you're okay just crafting pieces of cloth with optional reagents that increase your crafts by 20 skills, just skip the fabric specialist and go straight into nimble needlework to be able to craft a lot more. And don't get any of these multi-crafts and recovery enhancements. Just get the recipes to be solely a cloth crafter. The possibilities are infinite, but I strongly recommend, now that you have dabbled into multi-craft into fiber arts, just get the bolts, craft the bolts on a cooldown, and get a lot more gold out of the profession, because tailoring in this expansion is more used as a single profession that makes you a lot of gold rather than just one build that is making you gold. I wanted to make a tool maker build, but unfortunately this is where the next headache comes in. As you can see in the video, my skill right now is 477, although I have every single material and everything is at the highest quality. Let's imagine that I have all of the tools and accessories and I get 40 more skill here, and the skill is now at 517. That is right, yeah, 517. And I have maxed out every single node on this profession. I still cannot craft the highest quality of profession accessories because apparently it's not fixed yet. Now, it did change with every single maintenance that we had over at the beta. It was 421 in the previous build. It's now 477. Very weirdly, even if I don't have all of the materials, it's still stuck at 477. So this is probably a bug that will get fixed. But because I cannot calculate everything here, I cannot confidently talk about a toolmaker build. I can only speculate. I did try out every single of these nodes to see which one of them will give me skill when crafting accessories. Unfortunately, the hats and the robes from the Cinder Refinery didn't provide me with any skill like the WoW Within versions do, because I'm not sure if you had anything to do with the tailoring in the WoW Within, but in the WoW Within, if you wanted to make robes or hats that are profession accessories, you needed to speak just into the robes and the hats. You would just spend points into the main node, get the hats, max out the hats, get the same for the robes, then spec into the general tailoring skill node, wherever that is, and you would be able to craft every single profession equipment at the highest quality. But now, at least in the beta, that's not the case anymore. These two nodes, again, this is very important, in the beta, ain't giving me any skills when crafting profession equipment. But that might be the exact bug keeping us away from crafting it. They might change this up for the early access probably, or maybe the launch. That way, the hats and the robes subspec will give us skill points whenever crafting profession equipment. They might even add a new subspec to probably fiber arts or somewhere else, not nimble needlework, maybe even fabric specialist, who knows. But it is utilizing the skill from the fabric specialist. It did give me 5 skill here, 5 skill here, 5 skill here, 10 skill here, 10 skill here, and a lot of skill from fiber arts. So the headache that we had whenever we were crafting pieces of cloth, it is still there for the tool making stuff, and it is worse. But yeah, who knows? Maybe the fashion genius ends up being one of the subspecs that gives us skill for the tools, for the profession equipment, not the tools, because we're mostly crafting accessories here. Anyways, this is the next headache. I don't know what to think about here, but so far you aren't able to craft the profession equipment at the highest quality, even with the concentration. Maybe if I get the 40 points here, I will be able to craft everything with the concentration. Who knows? But just be aware of that. The accessories are in a very, very messy place right now. Another build I want to discuss is the strictly bolt crafters. Now, you won't be getting any of the Cinder Refinery or any of the fabric specialists here, at least not at the beginning. You will be only speccing into nimble needlework to get the most out of your cooldowns as soon as possible. So the goal here is to spend 5 points into the main one, 15 points into the middle one, and max out the last one, because that is enhancing the cooldown of those bolts. this is the most important perk when it comes to the like Arcane of bolts. Therefore, this is the most important. Then move your way back up because we are relying on skill here. Therefore, 15 more points here. You don't require any of these recipes, but you are getting skill and resourcefulness. Therefore, it is quite useful. Then you will max out Nimble Needlework because of the skill again. Then spec into the Sunfire Silver. The order of whichever bolt you get is entirely up to you. I'm not sure which one sells better, but check the market before specking into any one of those. Again, 15 points first to get the cooldown reductions enhanced, and then move your way back up. After doing that, because you're relying on skill and because the skill is a headache, we're going through the same headache that we had before. Therefore, 30 points fiber arts, 30 points textile utilization, 30 points into multicraft because this multicraft is quite useful to us now. And if you end up with excess knowledge points, fabric specialist. If not, just use optional reagents. That's the best way you can get the most out of the bolts with the skill. There is a version of it for the ingenuity and the concentration and art armies. I will talk about that at the end of the video. Let's move on to another build. Fabric specialist is mostly a farmer's build because it only enhances the drops of cloth that you get out in the world. And if you aren't sure which one of these subspecs you need to spec into, because they do enhance the drops from specific zones. So the left part enhances the drops from Eversong Woods and Zul'Aman. The right part enhances the drops from Voidlands and the Rootlands. I do strongly recommend you get the first fabric specialist main node to 30 because you need to wait a bit to get to know which farms are happening around the new expansion. A new farm might get discovered the first day, or it might get discovered a week later. Therefore, if you aren't sure, if you aren't one of those groups discovering farms or aren't sure which way to go, just get the main node to 30. By the time you have gotten the main one to 30, you should know which way to just spec into, or have enough knowledge points to spec into both of them. I do go with the Eastern Kingdoms if I were to risk it, because that is the beginning zone, and it is way more possible for people to just get clothes out of the humanoids that are in Eversong or the Zul'Aman, because it's home to the trolls and to the blood elves, as opposed to the Rootlands where it's mostly wildlife and void, which is mostly void creatures. There's one very weird change when it comes to tailoring in Midnight and farming cloth stuff. Arcano Weave and Sunfire Silk now has a chance to drop from enemies. And if you're farming this stuff, which I'm not aware how we can farm this stuff on the enemies because we had not tested anything big out on that scale, but the tooltip is saying that it can drop from enemies, therefore it can be farmed. You need to just spec into it. And you don't need to spend a lot of points. Just 20 points into the main one. You get a choice between one of these at the first 5 points that you spend into Nimble Needlework. Let's say we go with Arcano Weave. Now enemies has a chance to give you Arcano Weave. And spending 15 more points here will give them a chance to drop Sunfire Silk. This could end up being something with that every single farm that you do from every single creature that you kill. This could be specific mobs that drop specific bolts. I have no idea. But it is possible to farm Arcano Weave and Sunfire Silk in the Midnight expansion if you have these two perks unlocked. So also be aware that this is a possibility when it comes to farming cloth. Another build you can do is to opt in for enhancements, and that's a very easy as opposed to everything that we discussed in the video. the first thing you need to do is to unlock embroidery. Max embroidery out because it is giving us a lot of bonuses whenever we're crafting enhancements, which are the spell threads or the tailoring enchants. Then max out fiber arts. After maxing out fiber arts, it is best to get the most out of the multicraft. After getting the multicraft, you will go to textile utilization to get all of the resourcefulness. And as the last thing that you do, unfortunately the headache plays a part here again. You will go into fabric specialist and 5 points for skill here, 5 points for skill here, and 5 points for skill here. Therefore, 65 more points into fabric specialist to be able to create all of those enhancements at the highest quality without requiring unnecessary stuff. Anyways, this is probably the most straightforward build to do, and it is going to be quite great at the beginning. You only require 60 points and your profession, tools and accessories to craft everything in a profitable way. I also want to mention that there are 2 optional reagents that as of right now count as enhancements, and it's the Arcano Weave lining and the Sunfire Silk lining. Unfortunately, for you to be able to craft every single one of these at the highest quality, you also need to spec into Nimble Needlework. So on top of all of the stuff that we had from the fabric specialist and the fiber arts, you need to max out Nimble Needlework because it is giving you a skill whenever crafting stuff with certain bolts. Therefore, just spec into all of these stuff. The last subnode is still giving you a skill when crafting stuff with bolts, especially Arcano Weave bolts on the right side and the Sunfire Silks on the left side. Therefore, again, this is something that is very time consuming to set up, but it is getting contribution from those enhancement skills that you earn on the fiber arts. Just be aware that you can take your reagent maker build into Nimble Needlework after you have gotten all of the Spellthread enhancements. And finally, I want to take a few minutes to talk about alt army builds. The most important thing for you to know is that you need to max out Fashion Genius as soon as possible. You need all of the ingenuity and all of the concentration enhancements possible. And the fiber arts is giving you a choice of a subnode as soon as you unlock it without spending any points in it. Therefore, Fashion Genius is your priority. Spend 30 points here. Don't ask me any questions. If you're doing anything with the concentration, you need to max out this subnode. Because this is a concentration build and Tailoring's recipes mostly come from outside sources rather than the spec trees, I do recommend that you get the multi-craft on your alt army setup, because you're mostly crafting spell threads, linings or bolts with those alt armies, because you want to minimize your playtime every single week on those alts and those long list of alts. Therefore, it is always useful to just get the general stuff. If you do end up with excess knowledge points, you can also opt into resourcefulness to get the most out of those few crafts that you get every 4 days with your concentration before it feels out again. But again, this is entirely up to you. You can go into Nimble Needlework, enhance your boats and every single thing that you do with Sunfire Silk and Arcano Weave. You can even opt into specific pieces of gear. Spend points to unlock the cloak and craft cloaks with one alt, craft braces with another alt, and craft boots with another one. You can do this for every single piece of equipment. You don't need fabric specialist because it does give you bonuses and enhancement stuff, but it is not worth the knowledge point that it costs. Therefore, just skip fabric specialist. Get everything you can out of the fiber arts. If you do end up playing that alt and having extra knowledge points, opt into Nimble Needlework, Cinder Refinery, or even Spellthreads. But again, most of the recipes come from outside the spec trees, therefore you can do a lot with the tailoring profession without requiring much. You can set up as soon as you spend 30 points into Fashion Genius and have your concentration costs enhanced and start getting gold. But you can optimize it indefinitely because every single node in this profession is giving you something useful. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video and I did try my best to explain everything. It is again quite messy over at the beta. Tailoring is in a bad state. But let me know in the comments what you think about tailoring or if you gonna do tailoring stuff this expansion. Anyways, if you do like this type of videos and content, why not sub the channel? I will see you in another one. Bye bye.